All right, so it's 7 o'clock on Monday, November 15th, 2021, and I'll call the meeting to order for our Adelaide Metcalfe Council meeting. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Councillor McKinnon.
Yes, I have an interest in item 5, the Crothers McFarland drain.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Councillor McKinnon. We'll move into the minutes of the previous meeting, and those were from November 1st. We have a mover and seconder for those. Councillor McKinnon and Councillor Brody. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that's carried. And thank you, Councillor Clark. Just to note, if you can't see her on YouTube, it's because her internet is always unstable in the rural areas of Adelaide Metcalfe. So when we'll just be hearing from Sue this evening. So we're going to move into the drainage meeting to consider a contract price. So we need to have a motion from council that it adjourn its regular meeting in order to sit for the meeting to consider contract price for the Crothers McFarland drain pursuant to section 59(1) of the Drainage Act. Okay, moved by Deputy Mayor Hendricks, seconded by
I'll second.
Councillor Clark. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that's carried. And before I'll hand it over to Andrew, I just have to say that pursuant to section 59(1) of the Drainage Act, when the municipality receives a tender or contract price which exceeds 133% of the engineer's estimate for the contract price, the council of the municipality shall call a meeting. The township received one tender submission for the Crothers McFarland drain, and the submission exceeds 133% of the engineer's estimated contract price, and therefore the township has given notice as prescribed and to consider the contract price for the Crothers McFarland drain. And we have Mike Kerrigan and Wayne Ingold here, as well as Betty Ann McKinnon as parties of the drain. And I just want to note that the public is advised that comments expressed and written material presented are a matter of public record available for full disclosure. Alrighty, so with that being said, I'll hand it over to Andrew, our drainage superintendent, to go through his report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick background on this drain. Council held the consideration in July 19th of this year. Court of revision was held in August 9th of this year as well. There were revisions that were proposed for the future maintenance cost from the engineer, and also we had received an appeal on assessment. As per the Drainage Act, the court was suspended to deliberate these proposed changes. Notices were sent out to landowners that the court was suspended. The court was resumed on September 7th of this year, at which time the court accepted the proposed changes and notices were sent out to the watershed of this as well. Notice of tenders for the extension of the Crothers McFarland drain were issued Friday, September 30th to the list of contractors that have worked for the township in the past. Tenders were closed October 19th of this year at 12 noon by myself and Jessica Buttry, financial analyst. And you can see here that standard tender procedure and procurement policy was followed. And as the mayor had mentioned, that there was only one bid that was submitted for the amount of $67,522 before HST. And you can see that the estimate that the engineer had provided through the report was $32,160. And as the mayor had mentioned about calling this meeting, we have two options: reject the bid and contact contractors following the procurement policy, which allows for more targeted approach So I would contact contractors and ask them to please submit a bid. And the other option, number 2, is to accept the bid. I do want to stress that that is not my recommendation, but it is an option. And so it's down to my recommendation that council does not accept the tender submitted by JLH Excavating. Further, that council directs staff to issue a request for quotations following the township's procurement policy. I will hand it back to the mayor.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. At this time, I don't believe we received any written correspondence. That right, Mike Barnier, our clerk?
No, to the mayor, we have not received any written correspondence at this time.
Okay, so I'll move over to any members of the public. Do you have anything that you'd like to speak to on this report? Either Mike Kerrigan or Wade Ingold or Betty and McKinnon. Betty and McKinnon.
I'm in favor of option number 1.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Wade or Mike, are you wanting to make any comments? Okay, I see that Mike Kerrigan just wrote in the chat that he has nothing that he'd like to bring forward. Okay, and Wade, if you could just to make sure that we can hear you, because you are muted, so I just want to make sure that you're not trying to say something. So if you could just let us know that you have no additional comments.
We have no additional comments, no.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, so with that, I'll go to council. So the recommendation in front of us, if somebody would like to move that or a different direction. Okay, Deputy Hendricks.
Yeah, I'd move that we accept the drainage supervisor's recommendation for option 1.
Okay, and a seconder. Okay, Councilor Brody. And that motion is that council does not accept the tender submitted by JLH Excavating, and further that council directs staff to issue a request for quotation following the township's procurement policy. Okay, so that's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And that's carried. And we just need to have a motion now that the meeting to consider contract price for the Crothers McFarland drain be adjourned at 7:08.
I'll move that.
Okay, Councilor Clark and Councilor Brody, all those in favor?
Aye.
And that's carried as well. Okay, thank you, Mike and the Ingolds. Okay, so moving on to the next section of our agenda, which is the public meeting. So we need to have a motion that council convene into a public meeting to hear zoning bylaw amendment Z12 2021 at 7:09. Okay, Councilor McKinnon, seconded by Councilor Brody. All those in favor? And that's carried. And before we jump into that, when I hand over to Aaron, I just have to say, where is it here? The purpose of the following public meeting is to give council as well as the general public an opportunity to hear all interested parties with respect to the application being heard this evening. The public is advised that comments expressed in written material presented are a matter of public record available for full disclosure. And if a person or public body files an appeal of decision made this evening to the Ontario Land Tribunal without having made a written submission to council, the tribunal may dismiss the appeal. And if you wish to be notified of the decision in writing, please submit a written request to the clerk's office. And I see that we have Peter Boyce here. Are you able to hear us and see us? If you just take your self off mute.
Unmute.
There you go.
Hi, Curtis.
How are you, Peter?
Good.
Perfect. All right. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to hand it over to Aaron Besh, our planner, to go through the report, and then I'll hand it back over to you if you have any additional comments or questions. Okay, so I'll hand it over to Aaron to go through her report. Aaron, and welcome back, by the way. Aaron.
Thank you, Mary Smith.
Sorry, I saw you a while ago at the county building, and yeah. So welcome back, Aaron. I'm sure you enjoyed your little one at home.
I'm glad to be back, though.
Yes. All right.
All right, so I'm just going to share my screen. Here we go. So are you able to see the location map that I pulled up?
Yes, we are.
Wonderful.
Yes.
So the purpose of this application for zoning bylaw amendment is to permit the continued use of the subject property as a golf driving range and learning facility for a temporary period of time. So the address we're looking at specifically is 10625 Townsend Line. The owner of the property is Brenda Pedden-Boyce. So council may recall that we had an application for this temporary use quite a few years ago. I think this is maybe the second or third time we are doing the extension. So the previous application was applied for in 2018 and expires on November 19th of this year. So we are looking to extend that application so that the operation may continue. So one minor adjustment in this situation that was different from the previous iteration, as we've actually expanded the zoning, the temporary zoning area to include the bit at the front, because that is actually used as part of the business, and we'd like to recognize it as such. So my location map is a little confusing. The purple lines are the current zoning lines. So you can see where it came down, there was a little driveway and it cut straight down, and just this primary area was used as or zoned with the temporary use zoning. So we are extending it up to the road at this time. So the property itself is located within the agricultural area, and it is zoned agriculture as well. So in order to permit the zoning, which is not typically permitted in an agricultural area, we apply what we call the temporary use zoning bylaw. So again, this is just an extension. There's no other changes. There's no other implications to it, just aside from that little boundary change. The application was circulated as per the prescription of the Planning Act. The Conservation Authority indicated there was no concerns, as well as the county engineer, as Townsend Line is actually a county road. We did receive a public letter in support of the application from Alicia Kehoe. I believe that's how you pronounce her last name. It's attached to my report, and it's in favor of the use being continued and permitted in this area. So I have drafted an implementing bylaw, which has been provided for council's consideration this evening. And so my recommendation on this application is that it be approved, and further that council proceed with the first, second, and third reading of the implementing bylaw.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Peter or Brenda, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, it looks fine to me. I didn't realize the front part was never included in when we originally took it out, but it's good to know that you caught that, because that's good. That's all I have to say.
Okay, excellent. And I didn't know, Peter, I know you sent me a couple emails of some of the people that use your driving range. I don't know if you wanted to make mention of that. I know it has nothing to do with the application, but I thought it was very neat, some of the folks that use your driving range there.
Well, we got a really nice letter from our neighbor, Ed Stevens, who is our closest neighbor, and he's in total support. He and Ruth walk the property all the time, so they help pick up the golf balls. But on the whole, it's just we've had nothing but, how would I say, a great public support. I have about 4 or 5 letters, which I didn't send in. It's just, how can I say it? It's a facility that the kids enjoy, and the Kehoe girls, the number one Taylor, who's I think now 17, just signed with Alabama Crimson Tide, which is a huge, big university down in the States. And so she's on their golf team now. So all we're trying to do is create a facility to allow people to learn the game and enjoy. And the last 2 years with the pandemic, we've seen nothing but a lot of families and little kids, and we've got 3 or 4 little practice holes. So they take the kids out at no charge, and we just let them play, and they learn the game, and that's what it's all about.
Excellent. Thank you, Peter. Is there any questions or comments from members of council?
Curtis, I'd just like to make the comment that I think it's great to have it in our township. And I can only speak from personal experience that usually 3 or 4 times during the summer, we use that. We have 4 kids, and they've taken lessons in golf, and they are all avid golfers. And we use that as a good family activity, and then go out for brunch usually 3 or 4 times each summer. So I'm in support of it.
Excellent. All right.
Okay.
Right.
I would like to say one thing. It's sort of I wouldn't say a pain, but it's a pain going through this process. You know, every so often we have to, but because I'm involved in agriculture, I couldn't see going through any regulations to change it from agriculture, because when my days are up, and the land is there, and Peter's not here anymore, it can be turned back into agriculture because it's right in the middle of agriculture right there. Even though Mustardville houses are there, I just feel right now we're, it's good. Right now it's a good move. So that's why we have to go through this to keep it agricultural. Because not all the land there is used for the driving range. There's crops on that property too. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. It doesn't look like there's any other comments from council unless I'm wrong. No. So we have the recommendation in front of us, and that is for approval. We have a mover and seconder for that. Okay, Councilor Brody and Hendricks. Oh, Councilor Clark, did you have something additional you'd like to say?
No, I'm just getting ready to vote.
Oh, okay, so that's what we'll do now. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
And that's carried. All right, thank you, Peter and Brenda, and I'm sure council will see you again in another 3 years.
Okay.
I hope so.
I hope so too.
Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Right.
thank you.
Now we need to just have a motion to have council adjourn the public meeting at 7:18 and reconvene in regular session. Okay, Councilor McKinnon, Councilor Brody, all those in favor?
Aye.
And that's carried. And I think that is everything for planning stuff. So thank you, Aaron, for joining us.
Thank you, Mayor Smith.
And we'll
Have a
see
great
you
night, everyone.
in a couple meetings. Okay, take care. Alrighty, so next up is our delegation. So we have Kim Earls here, and she's from SCORE, which is the South Central Ontario region. I don't know why that's a mouthful right now. Economic Development Corporation. So I'll hand it over to you, Kim, for your presentation.
Thank you so much, Mayor and members of council. That is a mouthful to say on any occasion. I struggle with that each time that I have to present where I'm from. So I totally understand that. I'm going to attempt to share my screen here. I'm not the most techie savvy person, so I hope this works. Can you all see that?
Yeah, we can see it. I don't know if you can put it into presentation mode.
Okay, I will try to do that. It's fine if you see my notes. I have nothing secret and hidden, but it might be clearer that way. There we go. So thank you so much for allowing me to be here tonight and to give this partner update. I really appreciate your time. And I just have a few slides just to highlight our activities over the last while, and just wanted to share those with you. So first of all, just as a bit of a refresher, SCORE is a not-for-profit economic development corporation owned by the 5 counties of Brant, Elgin, Middlesex, Norfolk, and Oxford. And our current strategic priorities are infrastructure, supporting economic development, human capital, supporting economic development, and sector development. And our sector development focus is on agriculture and value add. And so over the last quite some time, but specifically over the last couple of years, we've really focused our infrastructure portfolio time on transportation. So we have been working with Ministry of Transportation for probably almost since I have been at SCORE, so close to a decade, to really encourage them to utilize SCORE as an organization that is interested in the safe and efficient transportation of goods. And we really were pleased when they announced their master transportation plan for Southwestern Ontario. Because of that great relationship that we had our past chair, Stephen Molnar, appointed to the Mayor's Task Force. And so that gives us a direct line to shape information going to and from the MTO. And I know specifically in Middlesex at the county level, there are other representatives that we have on that task force as well, which is fantastic. Further to the transportation file, we focused a fair bit on community transportation and most specifically inter-community transportation. There have been several community transportation systems and initiatives across the region and beyond, in fact. And SCORE, with the support of staff across Norfolk County, and in particular, Morgan was a great part of that, really developed a system whereby each of the community transportation agencies could maintain their own branding and their own priority areas for routing, but still benefit from a larger network. And what that does was that provided some efficiencies in community transportation, some cost savings, and just other benefits from working together as a group. And I'll go into a little bit more into that in the next slide. But also as a part of our transportation, over the last year and a half, 2 years since the pandemic, no surprise to anyone here, I know that there has been a continual disruption of our supply chain due to the pandemic. And so one of the things that we have focused on is maintaining our short line rail systems. That gives us some opportunity to have options for supply chain management across the region, and is a further built-in asset that really we think is important moving forward. And so we've started with the Cayuga Short Line Rail, which actually runs from Elgin County into Norfolk County. And that has, the businesses along that line have about 800 jobs tied to them. And there are businesses across the region. So also from Adelaide Metcalfe, there are some jobs that are tied to that. So the other piece that we focused on was broadband, and that is more of a supporting role. And then finally, the expansion of the natural gas program. And that's something that, again, SCORE has been working on for a number of years to encourage the province and private enterprise to expand the natural gas program, particularly in support of agricultural operations, but also for rural residents. And I had the opportunity 2 years ago, before the pandemic, to go and speak to the Committee on General Government in support of the expansion of that program. And that is continuing on. And so I know that's also important. And just go into a little bit more detail, the Southwest Community Transit Network. Specifically, over the past year, we received some funding through the Rural Economic Development Program. And what we did was we worked with the workforce planning and development boards across the region, but here in Adelaide Metcalfe, that would be the Elgin, Middlesex, Oxford Workforce Planning and Development Board. And what we've done is uploaded all the transportation routes to the job seeker website. So if you are a job seeker and you're looking at not only potential employment, you can also see where public transit might overlap that. And it also gives us some information in terms of where the gaps are. We've applied this year to the Rural Transit Solutions Fund. And what we're hoping to do with that funding, if we're successful, is to get a thorough inventory of transit assets across the region, not only to help us gain some efficiencies in where we currently are serving communities, but where there are gaps and where we can help to fill in those needs and leverage those partnerships further. And then the other priority that we've worked on over the last year and a half is the human capital. Again, kind of the pandemic has taken issues that we were aware of and really intensified the need that they need some attention. And particularly at the outset of the pandemic, there was quite a bit of activity and issues around agricultural workforce, specifically in gaining access for the seasonal agricultural workers. And so we certainly played an important role in informing both at the provincial and federal level what was happening within our farming communities, the impact that that was having. And so as a result of that, we also recognize the need for us to encourage stronger participation domestically in our agricultural sector. And so we have worked with Fanshawe College in the development of the Agribusiness Management Program, and that is offered at both the London campus and the Simcoe campus. And we worked this last year with Conestoga College that offers the Agricultural Equipment Operator Program. And that was meant to be a pilot program for over 2 years for 16 weeks. At a cost of only $500, I think, for each participant. But the response from both potential students into that program and also employers employing them right out of college was significant enough that we are now going through the process of, and when I say we, I mean Conestoga College with our support, is going through the process of making that a full-time program. So I think that demonstrated to us certainly that the need was there from both the student and the employer. And again, they received a lot of responses from across the province, which was also really encouraging. And finally, in the agricultural workforce space, we had the opportunity to partner with the Ontario Federation of Agriculture. They received some funding through the Canadian Agricultural Partnership, and SCORE's portion of the project, which was branded under Feeding Your Future, was to coordinate with 7 commodity organizations to create 9 videos specific to those commodity organizations on potential labor and capacity support within the agricultural sector. And those can be found both on the SCORE website and on the OFA website. And then sector development, again, we had fantastic partnership opportunities with the OFA and 6x16, which is the part of the OFA that focuses on youth education for the agricultural sector. And what we were able to create was, again, a branded product under Always in Season. And you can see that middle image there is the cover of the flip book that we created just to highlight some of the great agricultural products that are created here in the SCORE region. And then we were further able to work with 6x16, and we did a call for artists and created a downloadable coloring book featuring all local artist submissions, which was super fun to work on. So those are also available on the SCORE website and on the OFA and on the 6x16 website. And as well in sector development, we had the opportunity to partner with our workforce planning boards. The Western Ontario Wardens Caucus was also involved, and Western University in a program called Fresher. And some of you may have seen the report from that, but it was really a study undertaking the impact of COVID-19 on retail and food establishments across the region. And no surprise to any of us, that was significant. And there's a lot of great information and detail. So that report is also available. And that was SCORE's role, and that was more of a supporting role and promotion of that. And then advocacy and connecting. Over the last year, we've had 25 delegation meetings with cabinet ministers on issues specific to this region. We have ongoing communications with other levels of government supporting regional and individual county efforts. So someone had just mentioned about the upcoming Roma conference. And so we will again be requesting delegations there. And we're always happy to support and hear about communities within our region doing presentations there. We've again collaborated with other organizations such as the Middlesex, Elgin Middlesex Oxford Workforce Planning and Development Board on a number of projects over the past year. Some of those which I've just mentioned. And then this last year, we had the chance to collaborate with the Western Ontario Wardens Caucus Economic Development Committee. They received some funding to access business and agricultural related workforce information that is not typically available to us. And so SCORE was able to help analyze and disseminate that data and provide that back out to the partners. And in addition to our own funding and projects, we were able to provide 12 letters of support to other organizations who were successful in their funding applications. And I did a rough tally just before this presentation, and that leveraged amount was just over $1 million across the region. So again, that's a supporting role, but something that I'm very proud of and I think is significant for economic development across the region. And then just a little bit more about the partnership. So we believe that the SCORE partnership creates not only immediate value, certainly some years it's a little more tangible than others. A lot of the initiatives that we work on are very long term. And so the making any headway in addressing some of those issues takes some time. But more important than the year over year project value is a cumulative value over time. There's an equal say, a 1 in 5 vote at the board table. We've gained a recognition and a positive reputation as a region that not only works together, but offers solutions to address our issues and an ability to provide focused, action-oriented partnership with other levels of government and other organizations. We're able to tackle projects and issues that are larger in scale than maybe one municipality is able to take on their own, yet we're small enough to reach consensus and move forward on areas of focus. And again, that leverage funding on a regional scale. And then my final slide is just a slide that I know the scoreboard has used as their foundational lens for everything that we do, which is, we have accomplished a great deal as a 5-county partnership, and we are good neighbors working together for the good of all. And that's it for this evening. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Kim. Is there any questions or comments at all? Not seeing any. I just want to thank you so much for the presentation. And I know that from the county level, Councillor Warwick and Councillor Richards, both very active and involved in SCORE this term. And it's great to see that work. I think Councillor Richards, he's the treasurer, isn't that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I always see Councillor Allison Warwick, posting about all the delegations and presentations you guys are doing. So you guys are very busy, and it's a lot of great work you're doing on behalf of Middlesex County and the other 4 counties as well.
Thank you so much. Have a nice evening.
Okay, take care. All right, so moving on from delegations into correspondence, our upcoming conferences, seminars, and meetings. So our next regular meeting is on Monday, December 6th, and then on December 20th. The Roma conference is coming up on January 23rd to 25th, and that's virtual. Moving into the recommended readings, item number 1 is from the Middlesex London Health Unit, and it's their Board of Health update for October. Item number 2 is from the Assault Bayfield Conservation Authority, and it's their news release celebrating 75 years. Item number 3 is from St. Clair, and it's their September 2021 meeting highlights, as well as their conservation update for November 2021. Okay, moving into action required, and it's from CUPE, and it's regarding the OMERS underperformance. And what I'm going to do is going to hand this over to our CIO, Morgan Calvert, as I think we received some more information regarding that.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, thank you. And through to council, I did have a bit of a rant on the OMERS performance, or I guess underperformance, but really what we're seeing is some more information come out directly from OMERS this afternoon. So I guess just in light of information still traveling our way, and that we don't really know where the conversation is going to land, I guess I would recommend to council just deferring any action on this one until we really better understand what the conversation is out there and where it's going to land for us.
Okay, thank you, Morgan. Is there any questions? Looks like Deputy Mayor Hendricks.
Yeah, I would just make a motion to defer the issue.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Councillor McKinnon. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
And that's carried. And then we just need to have a motion to receive and file items CC1 through to 4. Councillor Brody.
I'll second.
All those in favor? And that's carried. All right, so moving to our staff reports. The first 2 are from our treasurer, Johnny, and it is the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund for next year. And it looks like we have a trend that's going on, isn't there? Johnny.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to council. The OMPF is the province's main general assistance grant to municipalities. The main objectives are to recognize the challenges of northern and rural municipalities while targeting funding to those with more challenging fiscal circumstances, such as supporting areas with limited property assessment and assisting municipalities that are adjusting to year-over-year funding changes. Annually, the township receives their allocation of funds for the upcoming year. So for 2022, Adelaide Metcalfe's OMPF grant will be just over $370,000. Which is a 15% decrease from 2021. So that's about $65,000. So that's coming from $435,600. Based on the current methodology, we will continue to see a decrease in our OMPF funding year over year. Adelaide Metcalfe currently benefits from the province's transitional assistance, which is guaranteeing 85% of prior year funding allocations. Eventually, this transitional assistance will no longer apply to us as we decrease to our funding target of $265,000, which is a significant decrease from where our 2021 allocation was. A number of our neighboring municipalities have also seen a significant decrease, as shown in the charts in the report. Those municipalities that have seen growth have seen an increase in OMPF funding. When looking at OMPF over the last 10 years, in our township. We have seen significant cuts to funding based on the allocation change back in 2013. At that time, Adelaide Metcalfe was receiving approximately $1.6 million in OMPF funding. When that is compared to what is being received in 2022, that's a 78% decrease, or $1.3 million. Unfortunately, this shortfall has been picked up by the general tax base. Overall, $370,300 will be included in the 2022 budget. The recommendation is that the OMPF 2022 report be received. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you, Johnny. Is there any questions at all? Deputy Mayor Hendricks.
It's not really a question, but it's a comment, and I suppose every council in rural Ontario has the same thoughts, but it appears at first glance that where the population growth is growing, they're taking less of a hit every year. It's almost as if they're just forgetting the original reason for this funding, and I don't know what anybody can do to fix that.
Morgan.
Yeah, so, Mr. Mayor, through you to council and Deputy Mayor Hendricks, you nailed it. It does seem that the new funding formula is rewarding places that are growing and not so much places that are sustained in its current assessment. The one of the notes that Johnny made in his report is that the OMPF is supposed to support areas with limited property assessment. We have limited property assessment, yet our OMPF allocation keeps going down. And places that are seeing growth or new homes are receiving more OMPF transfers. So what we're going to do as a township, Roma conference is just around the corner. We did submit a delegation request with the Ministry of Finance, which oversees the funding allocation of the formula, so that we can tell them our story. Because if OMPF's intent is really to support rural Ontario, it's absolutely not doing that. And we need to make sure that the Ministry of Finance and the province is aware that it is actually hurting rural Ontario.
Okay, thank you, Morgan. Is there any other questions or comments on this report? Okay, seeing none, so the motion in front of us that the OMPF 2022 report be received. Councillor Brody, seconded by
I'll move that.
Councillor Clark. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that's carried. Okay, and then Johnny, your second report there, which is the budget amendment for the Kerwood Park.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the council, as communicated in the monthly budget actual report, the 2021 budget didn't fully include the full cost of the Kerwood Park improvements. The total cost for phase one, including the non-refundable portion of taxes, is approximately $421,000. When constructing the 2021 budget, the full cost should have been identified in the budget. Since the township budget is built on a cash basis, and the 2020 project was deferred to 2021, the full cost of this project should have been captured in the 2021 budget year. So that's the $300,000 that was budgeted in 2021, and we did include $300,000 in 2020. We did budget $120,000 in 2021 to total that 420. The reserve transfer to cover this project in 2020 was also deferred and should have been identified in the 2021 budget as well, which would offset the total cost. So overall, the total budget amendment will include an increase of $301,000 to our revenues, which is coming from the Kerwood Park upgrade reserve, and the same $301,000 increase to the capital expense, to recognize the full cost of the Kerwood Park improvements. Since the revenues offset the expenditures, there is a zero budget impact as they both would net out. I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have on this amendment.
Okay, thank you, Johnny. Morgan, is there something you'd like to add on this report?
Yeah, no, Mr. Mayor, through to council, I just want to say thanks to Johnny. He's putting it in very nice words that when we went through 2021 budget, I screwed up in putting or in not putting the proper expense and the proper revenue in. The money was always in reserve. But no, Johnny, I do appreciate your kind words and trying to walk around that, but I did make that mistake in our budget. And I did joke with Johnny that if that's the only budget amendment that we're making in 2021, I think we did a pretty good job when we didn't have a treasurer and a clerk at that time. So thanks, Johnny. I appreciate that.
All right. Deputy Mayor Hendricks, you have a question or comment?
No, I'm just confirming it's basically just journal entries to switch money to proper accounts. So it's zero budget impact. So that's good.
That's correct.
Not a really harmful mistake.
Yeah.
All right. Is there any other questions or comments? We have the motion there, and it is that the 2021 budget be amended to properly account for phase 1 of the Kerwood Park, which adds $301,000 of capital expenditures to be funded 100% from the Kerwood Park upgrades reserve. Mover and seconder. Okay, Councilor Brody and Councilor McKinnon. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that's carried. Okay, looks like that's the last report from our treasurer. So we'll move into our clerk's reports. So the first one is the council composition report, which you went back to the drawing board and then came back, and here you go. It's exactly what council's looking for. Mike.
Okay, to mayor's members of council, as I was happily surprised to confirm through MAH and another municipality that council does have the option to change council composition through bylaw without notice and without appeal period. It still has to be done before the end of the year. The changes won't take place until the new council sits, but the election will be under the new council composition. So there is a draft bylaw prepared and a bylaw at the end of the council for your consideration. And I'd be happy to answer any questions in this regard.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Is there any questions or comments on this one? Councilor Brody, anything you want to add?
Thanks, Mike, for the good work. I thought that we'd be able to get that done, so that's good.
Sounds like you want to move that one. And that
Sure.
The recommendation is that the composition of municipal council for Adelaide Metcalfe be changed to consist of a mayor and 4 councillors to be elected at large, and further that council proceed with the first, second, and third reading of the implementing bylaw. Do we have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Hendricks. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that's carried. All right, your next report there, which is next year's council meeting schedule.
Okay, to mayor's and members of council, pretty straightforward report. This is the 2022 meeting schedule. In general, we try to obviously have a meeting at the first and third Wednesday of the month. But considering some factors such as the election conferences, stat holidays, and some seasonal issues, we've had to revise that a little bit. But you have the 2022 year in front of you, and we're asking that it be approved as presented. If there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Okay, thanks. Is there any questions or comments at all from members of council? Okay, seeing none, we have the recommendation in front of us, and that is to approve the schedule. Councilor McKinnon and Councilor Brody, all those in favor?
Aye.
And that's carried. And then I think we have one more from you, Mike, which is the Municipal Enforcement Unit Agreement Renewal.
Okay, to Mayor and members of council, we have a agreement renewal in front of us. The previous one was for a year and it expired just at the end of October. So what we're looking to do is retain the services of Municipal Enforcement Unit, MEU, and we just want some consistency. That's why we're looking for longer than a year. They do provide both bylaw enforcement services and consultation. We just met with Bill recently. He's starting to send over some bylaws and reviewing our bylaws as they speak. I would say very little risk at entering into a 3-year agreement, as the charges are only applied if we direct the MEU to do anything. And there is a pretty simple 60-day notice to get out of the clause, or if it's mutual agreement, I believe it's a week, 7 days. So if there are any questions on this agreement or moving forward with MEU, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Okay, is there any questions or comments from members of council? Councilor Brody.
Through you, Curtis, to Mike. So this is basically the same style agreement as we had for last year, as need basis. Yeah, pretty low key.
Yeah, through the mayor to you, Councilor Brody. Yes, just as we call them, as we need them. I mean, there was a little bit of discussions if they get called out on noise complaint, but we're not at that stage to address completely yet, but it would still at our discretion and our call out.
Okay.
Okay, is there any other questions or comments at all? Okay, seeing none, we have the recommendation in front of us. So we have a mover and seconder. Okay, Councilor Brody and Councilor McKinnon. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that's carried. Okay, thank you, Mike. We'll move on to the next one. It's from our CIO, Morgan, and it's the sale and other disposition of lands process. And this is for Panel Lane lands.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through to council. Back in April, council received a letter from Colleen and Ward Lashbrook with regard to some municipal property, which is landlocked just on the one side of Panel Lane. It abuts about 4 or 5 Adelaide Metcalfe residents or landowners. This property that, as I understand it, was supposed to be purposed for future development, which would be a roadway extending from Jenna Drive over to Center Road. Currently, the township doesn't have any plans, current or future, to execute that development. So really, this landlocked land is sitting there. It is a bit of a liability, generally speaking, for the township. So really, what council asked for was a report in terms of the process that we would follow to declare these lands surplus and dispose of them, and to potentially negotiate with abutting property owners, transferring those lands to each of those property owners. So the township does have a sale and other disposition of lands bylaw that we would, of course, look to here. Where the township council should consider first whether it deems it advisable to declare the land surplus. In this case, it is staff's recommendation to declare the land surplus. As I mentioned, we don't have current or future plans to use these lands, and they are simply landlocked between a bunch of property owners. So before we dispose of the lands, our bylaw does require us to get an appraisal of the property so that we can determine what the value is of it. I'm currently working on that appraisal. In the meantime, I'd also like to, so if council does approve the process and wants to move forward with this project, then I'd also want to collect some other cost estimates, being the surveyor's cost estimates or legal. And then we would provide notice to all of the abutting property owners really around what our costs are to undertake this process, and then get some form of commitment from the participating property owners so that we can walk through this process. It is a bit lengthy and time consuming, so we'll want to make sure that we have everybody on board. And then, of course, once we determine what all the values are and cost estimates, we work with these participating landowners. We come to some form of agreement, and then we'll end up working with council through enclosed meetings to formulate an agreement and dispose of these subject lands. If council chooses to move forward with this process, as I mentioned, the financial impact should really be at a minimum cost recovery for the township, given that this is benefiting the very few. If council wishes to undertake the process, I guess I already said this part, so I don't need to say that part, but if I'm happy to take any questions from council at this time, or I'd kindly ask that council approve the recommendations in the report.
Okay, thank you, Morgan. Is there any questions or comments on this at all? Councilor Brody.
Through you, Curtis, to Morgan. So first, you're going to get an appraisal done on this portion of property, correct?
So that part's already in progress, because we need to understand what the lands were actually valued at. And from what I understand, preliminary speaking, one section of the lands is valued less than the other section. So what it does is it would help us to determine everybody's costs or how they would break up the costs. It would help create a formula essentially to offload the lands to abutting property owners at a fair and transparent way.
Okay, I guess my only concern was we don't want this to be a cost detriment to us, that's for sure.
Yeah, and that's where I need to work with Johnny and Mike to pull some records about what we purchased the lands for previously and factor all of our costs, including any administrative time required to undertake the process.
Okay, is there any other questions or comments at all? Okay, seeing none, so we have the recommendation in front of us, the mover and seconder. Okay, Deputy Mayor Hendricks, and seconded by
I'll second.
Councillor Clark. And before we call it a vote, I just want to make just one comment. I'm very happy to see that this is come forward to hopefully sell these lands to these neighboring property owners. This is a property that personally I believe that we should have never purchased from the town from the township's point of view. This is something that we've owned for, I guess, probably close to almost 10 years now. And I could never understand really the purpose of it. And and to Councillor Brody's point, I just want to make sure that we are going to recover all the costs that we've incurred on the property, the purchase price that we had paid for, and any other additional costs as well. Just because it seems like a venture that we should have never got ourselves into, but we certainly did, and we're still working at it and trying to get rid of these lands now. And I'm glad that we're moving forward on having these properties out of the township hands. So that's all. So it's moved and seconded. So all those in favor?
Aye.
And that's carried. Alrighty, so that is Morgan, your last report there. So the next one is from our Public Works Manager, Coulter Cahill, and it's the Callum Road Landfill Closure Plan. Coulter.
Thank you, Mayor Smith. Ontario Regulation 23298, landfilling sites requires that a closure plan report is prepared to document the closure activities requirements for landfill sites prior to the landfill being permanently closed. The report typically addresses and defines activities, plans, and programs necessary for the post-closure period. It also acts as a guide for the use and application of the post-closure procedures and identifies changes or modifications to existing plans. After several meetings with the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, as well as the engineer and hydrologist from GHD, we have finally been able to obtain the requirements expected in this landfill closure plan report. Due to COVID, it's been quite a process, but GHD has been really good to work with us. In addition to preparing the closure plan report, supplementary studies are required in order to obtain more information about the site. These supplementary studies include completing a topographic survey and collecting soil samples to evaluate the final cover. GHD is a technical professional services firm that has been completing all of our annual monitoring and site inspections for both landfill sites over the last number of years. They have all the records and previous documented approvals that will be needed in this landfill closure plan. The short form professional services agreement is attached for council's reference. Council dedicated $10,000 towards the Metcalfe landfill closure plan in the 2021 budget. After going through the process with both the MECP and GHT, the cost to complete the closure plan for Metcalfe landfill would be an extra $8,000. This extra money is for the completion of a topographic survey and geotechnical sampling. By deferring the School Road landfill expansion to 2022, this will cover the extra cost for completing the Metcalfe landfill closure plan. Having this closure plan is a requirement by the MECP. So there is no getting away from it, but we are lucky that since the site is small in size and given its location, we definitely don't have to install any monitoring wells, which could definitely up the cost by thousands of dollars. So we are lucky that it is only $18,000 to complete. So I will open it up for questions at this time.
Okay, thank you, Coulter. Is there any questions or comments at all? No, doesn't look like it. So the recommendation in front of us, if we have a mover and seconder. Okay. Deputy Mayor Hendricks and Councillor McKinnon. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that's carried. Okay, thank you, Coulter. So that's the end of our staff reports. So do we have anything for other business at all? Councillor McKinnon.
Through you, Mayor Curtis, to Johnny. I wondered if Johnny has been able to reach out to the Minister of Ag and Food regarding grants not applied for on the municipal drains.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor McKinnon. We have been working with OMAFRA on the outstanding documentation and looking at all the grants that are outstanding. Our financial analyst is kind of leading that review process. We did recently write a letter, and thank you for the recommendation on that as well, to reach out to them and explain our circumstances and administration's commitment to cleaning up these outstanding items and putting policies in place to ensure we are reporting on things in a timely manner. Based on that, they did allow us to submit the outstanding documentation. There is no guarantee, but they will consider it based on some of how much room they have in their budget, really. It's what it's going to come down to. So our financial analyst will be working with our drainage superintendent to complete that documentation in the next week or so, or next week or two, probably. Hopefully get that in for the review in the new year. So total grants that we're trying to recover is about $187,000.
Okay. Thanks, Johnny.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Is there anything else for other business at all? Okay, seeing none. I was just wondering if somebody could maybe give us an update on how the Kerwood Park renovations and a new building is coming along. Coulter, there we go. Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Mayor Smith. It's actually coming along quite well. Due to quite a bit of rain there last month, it did slow up a little bit, but I don't know if anybody drove by today, but they got half of the steel roof on the entire building. The pavilion, or like the attached pavilion, has been erected. It looks actually really good driving by, so it's going to be great. I've heard a lot of great things from the general public, saying, how it's nice to see the park updated.
Excellent. That's good to hear. Morgan, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, Coulter, if you could just, we made 2 little sidewalk changes through the project, one because of drainage and one because of basically how we anticipate people walking. Can you just walk council through real quick those 2 minor changes?
Yeah, so right at the beginning, if you are exiting or you're exiting the parking lot towards the building, there was a small sidewalk that basically, you would walk right into the side of the canteen, which is great, but there was a grass area that basically was in between the parking lot and the pavilion. So we had to add a sidewalk in there just because everybody's going to cross the grass anyways. So it's just for better handling the traffic. And then on the south side of the pavilion, we couldn't attach the existing cement pad from the old pavilion just due to drainage, because it was going to drain all the water into the new pavilion. So there will be a bit of a buffer in there just to basically promote proper drainage throughout there. But there is still a sidewalk that connects the existing pavilion with the new facility.
Perfect. Okay, is there any questions at all from members of council about the Curd Park upgrades? Doesn't look like it. And since it is November, at the end of the month, we have some taxes that are going to be due. So I'm going to ask Johnny if you can give a little update on how folks that are watching us live on YouTube, how they can come into the office or how they can pay their taxes.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, tax are due at the end of the month. You are more than welcome to come into the office to pay your taxes. But if you choose to stay at home, you can do that from the comfort of your own home at your computer, online, or traditionally you can just go into the bank and pay your taxes there as well. So just make sure you bring in your tax bill and they'll be able to take care of that for you.
Okay, thank you, Johnny. If there's nothing else for other business, we'll jump into the bylaws. And we have a motion that bylaw number 68 of 2021, which is the council composition, bylaw number 69 of 2021, MEU bylaw enforcement agreement, bylaw number 70 of 2021, voice temporary use, and bylaw number 71 of 2021, the confirming meeting for November 15th, receive the first, second, and third and final reading. Mover and seconder. Okay, Deputy Hendricks, seconded by Councillor Brody. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that's carried. And if we have nothing else, we'll have a motion to adjourn at 8:07. Okay, Councillor Brody and Councillor McKinnon, all those in favor?